We're going to talk about how to understand your uncertainty, and if you really have trouble with ranges, a tool you can use that might help you become more accurate in providing real confidence intervals and ranges that are more likely to be correct, regardless of how much information you have about the situation or not. So this is the equivalent bet test. It works in some ways because our brains care about money, but there's some other things that'll also play into this. All right, imagine you were asked when feature X would finish. You know, you're a discipline lead or a producer or a project manager or something, and someone asked you, like, when will this thing be done? And you came up with a range. Now, your boss really wanted to make sure your range was good. So they presented you with an opportunity. They said that if your estimate was correct, you would win $10,000. If it was incorrect, you would win nothing. Immediately, it made you pause and think much more carefully about your range. And maybe you widened it, or maybe you were like, nope, it's still good. There's stuff going on in your brain that's causing you to go like, oh, I really want to be right then. And again, a simple way to do this might be to just go like, well, let me just make the range ridiculously wide. So I cover, all reasons. Oh, it could be done as early as 2 days from now or 5 years. And like there, okay, I won my $10,000. What you just did was if you took that approach because you really wanted the $10,000, you took what you were doing and you said, I definitely want to win because I want the $10,000. I'm going to give up like almost 100% confidence interval. Outside of this thing being canceled, I want that $10,000. Now imagine that there was a game show style wheel to spin. 90% of the wheel was red and 10% was blue. And if you spun the wheel and it landed on red, you would win $10,000. But if you landed on blue, you get nothing. This actually is what 90%, 10% looks like. So this is just a little chart. It's a pie chart. 10% of the pie. That's 10% of the pie. Is the blue. The other 90% is the red. We can use this tool to help us understand our own certainty or uncertainty and if our range is really valid. And let me try to walk you through how. I want to combine these two scenarios. So imagine your boss told you that you could either spin the wheel or go with your estimate. So you took this range, you'd given a range of when you thought feature X would finish, you weren't allowed to change anything, but he said you'd win $10,000 if you were correct, or if you were incorrect and the feature finished outside of the range you gave, then you would get nothing. But he also said, here's this wheel. You're also welcome to just spin this wheel right now. And if it lands on red, you win $10,000. And if it lands on blue, you win nothing. But actually, let's say you don't win the money right now. You win the money when the project finishes. Whenever it finishes, if you spun the wheel right now and it was red, then you would get $10,000. So you have two options, and both give you a chance at winning $10,000 and a chance at winning nothing. And the question now is, which would you pick? Would you choose to spin that wheel? You were asked for a 90% confidence interval of when feature X would finish. Would you spin that wheel? Because, hey, I would much rather risk getting $10,000 on 90% of that circle than I would my own estimate, or would I rather go with my estimate? Again, you're given both options here. Now, if you actually created a 90% confidence interval, both of these should look just about equally appealing to you. You should go, well, I gave you a 90% confidence interval, so that's my range. When I look at that, that's also 90%. It doesn't matter. I could pick either one. If you were to give that as an answer, if you say it doesn't matter, I could spin the wheel or I could go with my range, I think they're both equally likely, you are more likely to be operating out of an actual 90% confidence interval. If you would instead prefer to spin the wheel, probably means your range is overconfident. It's too tight. There's too much, you're too narrow, and you haven't actually captured the 90% confidence interval. On the flip side, if you would definitely prefer to go with your range, and you definitely wouldn't want to spin the wheel, you may be underconfident. You may have made the range wider than it needed to be. This is an exercise to help you actually calibrate yourself against, oh man, okay, and again, I told you that we care about money, our brains care about money. When money is involved, we tend to take these sorts of things more seriously. We suddenly become more risk averse. We're suddenly much more interested in getting the answer correct. When it's not, even though it always is, but when it's not directly involved, we can lose that a little bit and we become much more overconfident. And this is just taking advantage of a little bit of human psychology. Also, you get the visualization. It looks really likely that I'll land on red when I spin that wheel. And a 90% confidence interval should happen 9 times out of 10. So that should also be really likely. My estimate and my range should be really likely. But I know many people who, when they first encounter this, they go, oh no, I would much rather spin that wheel. And I'm like, great, you're overconfident, maybe very overconfident. How wide would you need to make your range before those things become equally appealing? And this is all just down to this question: when will I finish feature X? We're trying to understand uncertainty. What's that 90% confidence interval around this? I want to go one step further. So we end up with this interesting question: which wheel of the ones I'm showing here is most like your estimate? Again, you're asked for the 90% confidence interval. You give a range. They challenge you and say, would you rather spin the wheel to win the money, or would you rather go with your range? You say, no, I'd definitely rather spin the wheel. Great. Which one of these wheels would you rather not spin as we go down? And if you'd rather spin all these wheels, it means you might be less than 50% confident in your estimate rather than the 90% confidence interval you were supposed to provide. So I just gave you the top set, but you can imagine it continues to go. And I can imagine a lot of people, when presented with this, would go, oh my goodness, yeah, I would probably rather take that 50-50 wheel spin than the range I actually gave. You are severely overconfident in your estimate. Now, we tend to do this as human beings. We tend to do this in game development and software development. We often express our stated uncertainty in a way that underrepresents the actual uncertainty. We trend towards overconfidence. You may never become perfectly calibrated, but with a simple tool like this, you may be able to become better calibrated. So, cool little tool to keep in your belt. Think about which circle you'd rather spin against whatever it is. Can help you understand your own confidence a little bit more.